Welcome to the Cool Explorations podcast and radio program with your host, Tony Peters. I hope you'll enjoy today's segment.
Yes.
We, as humans, have different gifts, and it's like the gifts of
Yes.
the fruits of the spirit and
Yep.
the gifts that Paul talks about as well.
Yes.
We're all given our own specific things that God intends to use. And he
Mm-hmm.
has a purpose for all of those things. He gave us those gifts for a reason. And we need to find
Yes.
ways to glorify God through all that we do, and in our
Absolutely.
job, finding ways to glorify God. And I know in teaching it can be kind of tough because there's so much secular stuff that's thrown at you that it's just like, well, you have to teach this, you have to teach this, and it's
Well,
like, well,
yeah. K through 12 there is. Community
oh,
college,
yeah,
we have a lot of academic freedom. One of the things I wanted to mention really fast that you made me think of just how you were talking, which it's I think sometimes people feel like I messed up. I missed my calling. It's too late for me. Like I got off on the wrong plan. And I think what we need to realize is we serve the creator of the universe. He can make plan B better than plan A.
yeah,
Hello.
yeah,
He's not giving up.
yeah,
There's like, don't you think he could just create another path? Like he's the creator.
yeah.
So I
We
think a
like
lot
to
of
think
times,
we're in the driver's seat, but
yeah, no,
he's the
you
one
got to trust
driving.
him. You got to trust him and then ask him and ask for his guidance.
Yeah,
So, but I do think a lot of parents, we try to be the Holy Spirit with our children and we try to, dictate their life instead of stepping back, praying and watching. So you're watching, you're observing, and you're seeing, and obviously it's like pieces of the puzzle coming together, right? You're starting to see pieces of the puzzle come together with your son and your daughter. You're already seeing glimpses of their
yeah,
strengths. And then just seeing how that path, you know, plays out. And that's exciting. And to trust the Lord and to pray and
yeah.
ask him for guidance. And sometimes he'll give us little glimpses, like write a book. And that's kind of cool when he does that. He doesn't always do that. Sometimes he'll give us a dream or a word through a Bible study, through a message, just whatever, where he confirms it. And he opens doors of opportunity, uses other people.
Yeah,
So,
I find God speaks in very, very different ways. Sometimes I have actually had audible from God, like just it's so
mm,
clear that it was God that said
mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah,
But there's other times with dreams. He speaks to me through
right.
dreams quite
Yep.
often,
I've had dreams as well.
and or I'll be reading my devotional, and it'll tie in with something that I
Yep.
was just dealing with, and I'm just like,
Yep.
God, you're amazing. You brought this at like the exact day that I was dealing with this. I had this
Exactly.
question
The
and you
living
just
word, the
answered
word is
it.
living. Yes.
Exactly. And with our kids too, it is we try and make sure that they're doing their devotions and stuff. But with my son, direction wise, he gets so frustrated because he's so good. He's good at so many things that he's
Mm-hmm.
frustrated because he's like, well, he loves animals, so he's like marine biology. He's like, I could definitely do that. I'd be so good at that, and he would be fantastic at that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he'll be like, but I also want to be a pilot. Like he wants to be a fighter pilot.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but he has kidney issues. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're like, that might end up limiting some of your choices. We will see
Right.
going forward as you get to be an adult
Right.
where your health is at. And that will be
Right.
God kind of telling you, well, maybe
Yeah.
these careers are not the right ones. We'll
Mm-hmm.
close those
Yeah.
doors. We'll open this door. So we're like, you're 11. You've
Right.
got lots of
Exactly.
time yet where you can figure out exactly where you're going. When you get
Right.
to school, you're smart enough, you can take all the sciences. And
Mm-hmm.
then you've got
Mm-hmm.
your options when you get out of high school and into the
Yeah.
world. And
Definitely.
he's so good at math too that we're like, yeah, you can be in the algebra because there's a separate course in our high school, or at least there was when I was going through for algebra. So you can take
Mm-hmm.
your regular math and then you have your advanced math. And so like
Mm-hmm.
you could do that, and then you have your options when you want to get out.
Right.
And
Yes.
he's also good with his hands. So he's like he's like, I could be like a mechanic for
Wow.
something. And we're like, yeah, you could be a mechanic. He's like, but I wouldn't make as much money. I'm like, money is not the deciding factor
Right.
that you do. We're like, you want to love what you're doing.
Maybe passion and desire, right? That's what, like you
Yeah.
just said.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to love what you're doing. I've done too many
Yeah.
jobs where it wasn't what I enjoyed.
Oh, for
And
sure. And I mean, and we all have those jobs, right? We all have
yeah,
jobs that pay the bills. one of the things you just mentioned, which I think is important, is yeah, you're discovering it and you'll figure it out and just stay on the path. I tell, because I teach 18, 19, 20 year olds. My husband was 31 years old when he became a police officer. Prior to that, he
Mm.
was a machinist, but he always wanted to be in law enforcement. He was 31. He's had a very successful career. He just retired as assistant police chief. I was 27 when I moved into forensics, and I've had a good forensics career. So a lot of young people think, well, that's old, 27 and 31. But I hear young people saying, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I wasted a year or two. I'm so far behind." And they're like 22 years old.
Yeah.
And I tell them, no, you haven't. You've learned, right?
Yeah.
One of my son always did he did Brazilian jiu-jitsu and MMA when he was young, and his MMA instructor said, "You never lose, you only learn." That was his
That's great advice.
message.
That is
Yeah.
really good
He was a
advice.
great MMA instructor, and you never lose, you only learn. And so that's part
Yeah.
of the process too, right? And the other point, I guess I said too, when you know your path, also God uses our experiences, doesn't he? He uses what we've been through in our childhood. He uses disabilities. He uses all of that as part of unfolding into how he uses us. But like we were just saying, it's not about us. It's about he uses us to bless other people too. So,
Yeah. Well, and that is exactly right. And when I was I was studying youth care work, I got into that because of my own childhood past. And there was actually a lady, she was in her late 50s and she was just studying youth care work because she had retired from her other job and she's like, this is something I feel like I want to
mhm.
do. And so it's like, yeah, God can use you at any age and
Yeah.
use your experiences. I've been able to use all my experiences to do this podcast for 3 years,
Yeah.
and that has been great. I wouldn't have had the empathy or understanding if I hadn't had all those life experiences that God brought into my life. And it's helped me to be able to understand with guests and have conversations with people, or
Mhm.
even online where I have when I have Twitter battles with people sometimes. Uh,
Yep.
God has helped me with knowledge and now developed patience, so that I
Mm.
can actually have a proper discussion with people when they're trying to just you can tell they're trying to troll, or they're trying
Mhm.
to get an ire out of you. And God's just helped me to be able to actually have conversations with these people.
That's amazing.
And it's not something that when I was 20, I would have been able to do because I was too brash. I was far too
Right.
brash at that age. So I definitely could not have had that patience to have those conversations. Whereas God's now like, okay, I've taught you.
Mhm.
Now you're going to use these experiences, and prayer is key when you're having any of those conversations.
Definitely. And you just look at the timing of that too. Look at how we have so many online platforms of reaching
Yeah,
people now because of the pandemic and how God's using that. And you see, probably could see the timing of your own life and the
yeah,
things you've gone through and how his timing is perfect. We just have to trust, right? And be
yeah.
patient, right?
The trusting and being patient is definitely
I know.
the hard part.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that I do kind of want to get into is you talked about why you decided to write your book
Hmm.
a little bit. So, did you want to just tell us a little bit about what that book is about?
Oh, that's
Um,
probably a good idea.
and at the same time, you can also explain what you do kind of in layman's terms. So, because
Okay.
I know there's very technical terms and stuff you can use, but just
Hmm.
something that's very basic that people could understand. And I think they both kind of tie in together because in the book you get into some
Yeah,
of that stuff in a way people
I
can
do.
understand.
So teenagers for the last 20 some years. So it was in 1998 when I first got into forensics, and I've done a I've done a lot of different um, training events with teenagers. I also have a heart for abused children. I used to teach Sunday school at a group home for abused children who were living in social services group homes, and that is really where my heart's at. And but throughout the years, I've seen how young people really love forensics, and the book, write a book when that story came into my mind. the story, okay, I was pregnant and I didn't have any children yet. So I do not have a daughter, but the main character is a young girl, is a girl. And at the book one, she's 14 years old, summer going into her freshman year of high school, about to turn 15. And her mom is a bloodstain pattern analyst. Her mom is me, okay? A fiction version of me. Her dad is a DEA agent, big Scottish guy. So her dad is my husband, a fiction version of my husband. And the young lady who I wrote about, the main character, Bailey Mckenzie, the name I just made it up. Mckenzie is a Scottish. It could be Scottish or Irish, but she's Scottish.
It's
And
actually my daughter's middle name. So when my daughter,
Mackenzie?
yeah, when my daughter saw that on
Oh,
the book, she was just like, she's like, that's my name. And just like, yeah, that's your middle name. That's really cool.
yeah, that is neat. Well, when I thought of her personality, I thought of a friend of mine, Mary Jo. We were friends in our early 20s, and she had a daughter named Cassie who loves science. She's now a mother herself. We haven't really stayed in touch over the years, but I remember Cassie, when Cassie was young, was very smart, intelligent, loved science, and also she just made me think. I thought of who is Bailey, and I thought of Cassie's personality. So I kind of developed the fiction character of Bailey around thinking about how Cassie was as a child. And I suppose I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning, but then it just kind of, then I just kind of developed the character. But Cassie, or I'm sorry, Bailey Mckenzie learned, she started as a junior intern with her mom and learned photography, bloodstain pattern analysis, and just helping out in the crime lab. And then she met other, so the story is actually about five young people her age. They're all the same age. They're all have different disciplines in forensics, and they all have parents who have influenced them in their discipline. And so they've developed their discipline in forensics through their parents' knowledge. Like one of them, her father is a well-known microbiologist, and so she learns about DNA. Bailey is a really good at photography, bloodstain pattern analysis, like her mom. There's Jake Wayne, that his dad is a sheriff's deputy, so he does the firearms part of forensics. And the one who does the DNA is, her name's Lindsay Smith. So and they all kind of are different ethnicities, which I just would really just wanted some diversity in it. And just here in San Diego County, I've really interacted with a lot of different young people of different diversities, cultures, and so they each are different. So Bailey Mackenzie's Scottish, Lindsay Smith is African American. Her parents are scientists that travel the world. She has a sister who goes to West Point. Jake Wayne is Bailey grew up with him. He is a tough, athletic kid who kind of can be um, irritating to Bailey quite often. And I developed that character to be like my son's personality. So as I've edited the story over the years, of course, I know my son very well. And so Jake has kind of become a personality similar to my son. And so he's the firearms expert of the group. Then I have Ernie, who is Hispanic, and he does fingerprints. So he's the fingerprint examiner. And actually, his persona is similar to one of my mentors, who Rodrigo Viesca, who I mentioned in the book at the beginning. He was a forensic technician and latent print examiner, and just kind of made me think of him. So, with fiction, you do grab from truth, right? You grab from
Yeah.
parts of your life when you write. And then, yeah, so those are my characters. And then they all have different, their parents kind of draw them in. And there's a bunch of layoffs. So they basically, Renee Mckenzie, Bailey's mom, is trying to go to all these crime scenes. The crime rate is really high, and she starts bringing them to help her at crime scenes. And they go to crime scenes together, and they have success in their work. And so the book one, it starts off with a triple homicide. The DEA gets involved, so Bailey's dad gets involved. There's a lot of action. There's I read, somebody said Man, I would have loved to gone to crime scenes at age 15, but my mom wouldn't have been happy with somebody shooting at me. So, there is fiction components to it. Obviously, 15-year-olds don't go out to crime scenes, but um, every part of what they do, I make the forensics accurate. And if there's something forensically related that's not my specialty, I do ask questions of people who I know that do that. So there's actually education involved in it too. So as you read the book, there's a lot of action. There's how to process scenes as far as so it's all accurate and you can actually learn about forensics as you do it. And there's a lot of character interactions. The characters develop, their personalities develop throughout the book. And then in book 2, which I'm writing right now, they're freshmen in high school. And they're starting to mature. So as I'm writing them, you're seeing how they're maturing. You're seeing how the relationships are growing between each other. And you're also seeing what goes on in high school, other things. There's going to be different aspects of going to high school and how it affects you as a person. So it's all kind of intertwined as a fiction novel, but it's accurate forensics, action, um, and teenager interaction, character interaction. I don't know if I did a very good job describing that, but
That,
that's the
that's
book.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully people enjoy it. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people my age that are reading it. And actually I do have some of my college students who have read it and said, "I love this." So I'm like, "Great. I'm glad that adults love it. I hope teenagers do too." Because
Yeah,
I
that,
wanted something healthy and forensics, action, and wholesome for teenagers. So that was my
yeah,
goal.
that was something when I was writing that. I loved it when parents would come to me and say, my kid who doesn't read is like loving your book and he wants you to write another one. And it
Good.
took me years to get a second one out. Now my kids are telling me I need to write a third one, and I'm just like, I don't know. It takes the right mindset to
It
write,
does.
and
Time.
like, yeah,
Time as well,
time. And
right?
I am
Yeah.
very much a perfectionist, so it takes me years to actually
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
edit and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit. And
Definitely.
I have a teacher friend who's great at English, and so she actually did some editing. I had a professional
Good.
editor in Saskatoon, which is a city a few hours from us, who actually did
Mm-hmm.
some of the editing, and then there's the publisher who goes through and edits, and yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's quite
My
a
first,
process.
I have a close friend that I grew up with named Courtney, and she's a professional editor. She was the first person to read the first draft and um did some, yeah, grammar, English, all that editing. But yeah, it's a lot. I
Yeah,
honestly think fiction writing is more difficult than technical writing. I do. Because
yeah,
technical writing, it's just straight up, here's what you do, boom, 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 boom,
yeah.
and add photos, this is how you do
Essays,
it.
essays.
Yeah.
I could nail off essays growing up,
Yeah.
or any of my college papers. I was the type, I
Mm-hmm.
had all my college essays done in the first month of being at
Wow.
school, because I would just go through and I'm just like, okay, I don't like
You can
having
write.
I don't like
You're a good
having
writer.
things on my to-do list either. So it's,
Mm,
and
mm-hmm,
essays,
mm-hmm,
I'm like, oh, I can nail off an essay easy, do my research, and I'm good. It's all done. And everybody else would be scrambling, and I'd be like, oh, I'm
mm-hmm,
done.
mm-hmm.
Just handing my assignments on or
So
for the
that's a
day.
gift, right? Comes
And
easier to you than others.
yeah, so that was something that really helped me with that part of it. And fiction writing, I guess I'm a little bit more of a perfectionist.
Fiction writing, I think, is
Like you say,
harder.
yeah, because you have
You're
to,
definitely critiqued harder because you've got to make those characters make sense to other people. And I think sometimes you have to get out of your own head because in your mind, you know what you're trying to say.
yeah,
But then sometimes I think it's helpful. I don't know if you found this, if when you give some time away from your writing and then come back to it and you're
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
I need to change
I'll
that.
start working on another piece of work that I'm doing, and then I'll come
Mm-hmm.
back around to it. And I try and make sure I do leave
Mm-hmm.
time in between my edits. And
Mm-hmm.
most people, like, they say, well, when you're editing, you detract. Well, I found I detracted and then I added more than I
Mm-hmm.
took out, because I'd be
Change.
adding more depth to it.
Yes, exactly. That's
And
what I mean. When you realize, oh no, this needs to go deeper, this needs to flow better. You want people to really be brought in and not just skim over stuff.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
characters have to have depth. Like, they
exactly.
have to have
Yeah.
backstories. I've gone in and
Mm-hmm.
done writing workshops with schools, and
Mm.
I love it. It's so much fun when you get in there, because you're like, to kids, you're just like, okay, let's do a proper. story web. Let's actually
Hmm.
get all these things branched out. And now once we got this branched out, what do we take this part of that branch? Let's
Great.
write out part of that. So then they can
Wonderful.
actually figure things out and actually figure out that writing process. And it's amazing to see kids just get excited about that.
You actually sound like one of the editors that gave me free advice early on. Some of
Yeah,
the stuff that you just said, they said to me, and I'm like, okay. And yeah. So that's good that you're doing that.
I said to Susanna that if she ever needs someone like your contact lady,
Editor.
yeah,
Yeah, Susanna, yeah.
I told her if you guys ever need someone to just throw a book to and you want advice to on it while you're doing a manuscript, just shoot it to me and
Not everybody will give free
I'll read it
advice, and
over.
then everybody will do that. And that's that I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the editors who gave me free advice. And I think I'm thankful that they did,
I think it's
to,
easier to edit someone else's work than it is to edit your own.
oh, that's for sure. And one thing I'll mention, Dr. Samuel Lowry, as I mentioned before, the owner ambassador, he, when we were first talking, an editor had just said, take something out that had to do with an introduction of the characters. And she said, take that out. And then he said, it'd be really nice if you had like an introduction of the characters more at the beginning. And I said, that's so funny you would say that because an editor just told me to take it out, a different editor from a different publishing company. And he said to me, you could ask 100 editors the same question and get 100 different answers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I thought that was funny,
yeah,
being a man of the publishing world. So there's that too, right?
yeah,
Obviously, the advice of editors is fantastic, but at the same time, some of it is opinion based, right?
yeah.
I guess. But
Well,
that was funny that he said that. I
and
chuckled and I was like, okay, I feel better now.
and publishers kind of that they have a feel for what sells too. So when they get
Yeah.
into it, whereas as an author, you're thinking more about what you like, and publishers like, okay, is this
Yeah,
going to be what other people can draw into? So
that's true. And then senior editors also can be like thinking like a publisher probably because
yeah,
I wanted even more how to stuff forensics and my senior editor, Katie Smith, had said, you got too many camera settings in here, Tina. And I was like, I don't think so. I think we need the camera settings. She's like, I don't think so. And Sarah kind of mediated that, was like, how about I try to change this a little? And she found the medium between us of the author versus the senior editor of what you wanted, right?
yeah. I just had Katie on it, so yeah,
Yeah, I know. I haven't
discussed,
listened to it
yeah.
yet. I'm going to listen. But
Um,
that's funny. I'm learning about all this, how, yeah, publisher, senior editor, how it all plays out. But it's a journey.
it is definitely a journey. Which kind of leads us, we're running out of time, but
Okay.
I do want to discuss Ephesians 2:10 and Philippians 4:13.
Yes.
Maybe you want to just read those verses if you got them before you, and then just explain why those verses are important to you, and
Yeah.
what we can take from those verses.
So Ephesians 2:10, you are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for you to do. That I felt like the Lord showed me that for my son. And for me trusting, and that was when he was in middle school, probably your son's age, of really trusting the Lord and what he's doing in his hand. And now that really has played out now that my son's a United States Marine, flying on the back of an Osprey, he's a crew chief, stationed in the Pacific where it's very volatile, just had his first deployment. So there's been a lot of promises the Lord has shown me, but that was part of it that um as a parent, that was the verse for the parent, but I think it's good for young people as well. And so that was a verse for my readers to realize, the teens, the young adults, to realize God has a plan prepared in advance for them. So go to him, trust him, let him carry that out. And then Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, has been really my verse throughout my life. I think a lot of people
My
like that
favorite
verse.
verse. Yeah,
Yes, that's a verse for me because the Lord, how he works is he will stretch you, right? He
yeah,
will not ask you to do something you're comfortable already doing. He will stretch you. And so I lean on him. And so that's why. So that one's been my verse.
yeah. And podcasting was one of those things for me where it's like I never thought I'd be into podcasting. My parents had always told
Mm-hmm.
me I should get into radio.
Yeah, you have a voice
Um,
for it for sure.
but as I started doing it, God just made me more and more comfortable. I started out in politics, so I was actually
Mm,
interviewing a
mm.
lot of politicians
Okay.
and the local our local elections when they ran, we had all the mayoral candidates came on. I asked them all the
Mm,
exact same questions,
mm-hmm.
and then all of our people for our oh, I just forgot the name of it. But the step down from the mayor anyway, the
Oh yeah.
city
Yeah,
council,
yeah, yeah.
they all came on and answered the exact same questions, and they all appreciated that I wasn't showing bias.
Mm.
I wasn't showing who
Great.
I
Yeah.
had someone in mind that I actually did think I wanted to vote
Mm-hmm.
for, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'll ask them all the exact same questions.
That's
I'll come into
good.
this with an open mind, give the listeners a chance to be like, okay, I like what this person's saying.
Yes. We
And
could
all
use
the
you in America right now.
and all the questions that I asked were actually questions that I'd seen people asking online, or people had contacted me asking if I could ask this because I was doing the questions. So I asked questions that actual people in the city were actually wondering about, and topics that they were wondering about. So it was great to get those to be able to have
Yeah.
that insight. And they've actually asked if they when they do their next election round,
Mm-hmm.
if I would pull out that hat again. And I'm like, I don't know, I might. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
America needs that.
So it's
We
something
need
I
that
might
right
end up
now.
doing. But I like people who are online who
Mm-hmm.
like most of them that I listen to, they lean right,
Mm-hmm.
but they aren't full right wing.
Right.
They do have some left wing
Moderate.
stuff that they're
Some
there.
moderateness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, that's just a fence sitter, and now they just call you right
No.
wing, and I'm like, I have so many things that I agree with on the right, but there's things on the left I agree with
Yeah.
too. And that's where
Yeah.
I got death threats from the left, and
Mm.
I got hate mail from the right. So it's just like, oh, you can see the
Hard to
difference between the
win.
two. So it's like, so which side would I prefer to be on? Well, I'd prefer to
Yeah.
be on the side only sending me hate mail instead of death threats.
Instead of,
So,
well, there you go. If you
so
have to choose
if you're trying to
the
convince me to
worst.
go one way, well, you're kind of deciding for me. But
Right.
no,
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just the kind of person that I see things logically and with
Hmm.
reason, and it's like that's the kind of
Yeah.
brain I think my son has too, like that real
Yeah.
analytical kind of mind, and that's the mind a writer really needs, is that analytical mind, which you've obviously got too, so that you can go in there and
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, and God
It's
has
harder than
given
what
us
people
that.
realize, but you do have
Yeah.
to keep grinding it out. It's not, I mean, yeah, it's a process, that's for sure.
Well, like you say, it's a gift. It's something that God has given certain people, and not everybody
Hmm.
has that mind. And that's not to say,
Yeah.
like my son always, he knows he's smart. His teachers want to move him up 2 grades, and
Wow.
we've just said no because he's already the youngest in his class, being a December baby. And so we've just like no. And he's like,
You're
I want to stay
trusting the
with my
process.
friends. He's like, I want to stay with
Good.
my friends. So we're just like,
See, if you
no,
lived in
he'll
Southern
stay there.
California, you would have him graduating from college already. There's a
Oh,
lot of competition with your kids here.
Probably, but we're just like, no, like we're just like, he'll do that. And when he talks to his sister is smart in different ways. And
Hmm.
so we're just like, he's like, he'll just talk to her like down to her. And we're like, no,
Yeah.
God has given you the gift that you understand
Hmm.
this part, but your
Yeah.
sister understands this. Do you understand this?
That's wonderful.
And my son can spout off things about that, but I'm like, but do you really understand
Hmm.
it and have a passion for that? Your sister does. And
That's wonderful.
so it's
I
kind
wish
of,
all parents did that.
yeah, so it's kind of like that in your own life. You have to look at it from that way and be like, okay, so God's given me this gift. He hasn't given this other person that gift. So I have to try and
Exactly.
understand and have
Right.
empathy for where that other
Yes.
person's coming from, and be like, okay, they're not stupid just because they don't understand it or see it
Right.
the exact way I understand it.
Yeah. And like you said at the beginning, focus on your own lane, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what God wants. He's like, yeah, like you're worried about everything going around you. Let's focus on doing what you love and glorifying God through it.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we end up with even the verses that you gave. Like God does stretch you, but he puts you in areas where you are going to grow and you're going to excel
Definitely.
and be good at. And he
Bloom.
knows. He
Bloom like a
knows.
beautiful flower, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is a great note to wrap up on. I do want to give you a chance to give a shout out. So
Yeah.
where do we find you and your book online?
Yes. So the book is Bailey Mckenzie, Crime Scene Specialist. And Mckenzie is Mckenzie. So Bailey Mckenzie Crime Scene Specialist is sold on Amazon. And of course, it's Ambassador International on their website. Barnes and Noble, ChristianBooks.com are selling it. It is a Christian book, Christian publishing company. And Bailey Mckenzie has her own public Instagram, and that is CSS Bailey Mckenzie, and her own YouTube, which is at Bailey Mckenzie CSS. So I put forensic videos on there. So of course I put some book stuff on there, but also anything fun, forensic stuff that I'm teaching in the classroom.
Oh, that's cool.
I just posted bloodstain pattern analysis lab that I did with my students. We're getting ready to do some bending of light Wednesday, tomorrow night.
Light
We're going to be doing
refraction? Is that
light refraction. Yeah.
Yes.
We're
That
going to
sounds
bend
fun.
some light. I don't know if I can actually capture bending light, but I'll be capturing students doing it, and fingerprint photography. So I'm going to take some photos, create a fun Instagram video, post it on CSS Bailey Mckenzie Instagram. So it's public. You can follow her. And also on the YouTube at Bailey Mckenzie CSS. I disable comments a lot of times because there's some internet trolls out there that will put really inappropriate comments, and I
Yeah.
just don't. I want children to be able to go on and see cool forensic stuff and not see a troll saying something inappropriate. So there may
Yeah.
not. I
I have
disable
I
the
have
comments.
most of my comments so that I have to approve comments before they get posted for that very reason.
I'm afraid they'll slip through, and I just don't want. Yeah, it's hard,
Sometimes I
but
go through and
that's.
I'll delete afterwards because there's some that, yeah, like you say, some slip through and then you're just like, that's
Mhm.
nothing to do with the video. That's just a promo thing for you or whatever. And I'll
Or
just like,
something inappropriate that's
yeah,
very raunchy. It's like no. And
yeah,
also so has Facebook. So the Instagram and Facebook they post simultaneously. So that's CSS Bailey Mckenzie if somebody prefers Facebook over Instagram.
awesome.
And that's it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's been a real
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I hope people have learned something from this as
Likewise.
it was very, very interesting and a great topic. So thank
I
you for
really
coming on.
enjoyed talking to you, Tony, and hopefully we talk again soon. And I'm going to start following your social media because I already follow your podcast, but I'm going to follow your other social media because I like what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my Twitter is spicy.
I haven't really gotten into Twitter that much, but yeah, that would be interesting with the political stuff we're dealing with right now in America. That would be a good time to hop on for sure.
Thank you for listening to the Cool Explorations podcast and radio program. I hope that you've enjoyed today's segment, and I hope that you'll consider supporting us at Cool Explorations on Patreon, as well as you can shoot me an email at tpeters745 at gmail.com if you'd like to support in other ways other than Patreon.